I cannot hear anything. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for checking on that. We're unmuted for one line. Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education regular meeting for March 23rd, 2026. Thank you for being present. I call this meeting to order. Let's have the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Wilcox, will you please lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board members, thank you. Board members, thank you for your presence. Others, all, thank you for your presence. Next on the agenda is public participation. Welcome to the Board of Education regular meeting. Regular meetings are a time for the board to conduct its business. As the Board of Education, we are here to set goals, listen to reports of the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, and personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. The board may hear public participation for up to 60 minutes. Public participation shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per speaker. One speaker cannot yield their time to another speaker. There will be no responses this evening to any questions or concerns raised. They will be referred to the administration for review. As adults, we serve as positive role models for our students. Please be respectful of people. We ask speakers not to make defamatory comments or use abusive or vulgar language. Dr. White, are we ready for public comments?
We are, but at this time, there are no raised hands and no one signed up to speak.
Okay. Thank you. We'll close public comment and go to the agenda. First action item is the approval of the board meeting minutes of March 9th, 2026.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the board minutes for March 26.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Any discussion? Seeing none, Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Ms. Cologne for approval of board minutes,
Yes.
Mr. Ailey,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries. Thank you. Next is the personnel report. Dr. Negron.
Good evening, Dr. Yarborough and members of the board. There's some retirements that I wish to highlight before asking you to approve the personnel report. We do want to recognize Constance Piersanti, instructional math coach, who will retire on June 30th. She has served for 27 years with NHPS, impacting our students, families, and the entire community. I also want to acknowledge the work of TESOL teacher, Michael Esposito, who will also retire on June 30th after dedicating 28 years to our district. And last but not least, want to acknowledge school psychologist Elana Coverman, also retiring on June 30th, 2026, after serving a total of 26 years. And with that, I ask that you please approve our personnel report.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the superintendent's personnel report.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Wilcox?
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Thank you for those who have retired. We thank you for your commitment to the district all these years. We will vote. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Ms. Cologne,
Yes.
Mr. Ailey,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That motion carries. Next, the Finance and Operations Committee, Mr. Wilcox.
Yes, before I get started, just checking to see if anybody would like anything moved separately. Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to make the main motion, and that is I move that we approve this one abstract, this one memorandum of understanding, this one purchase order, these 4 contracts, and these 3 change orders as outlined on our agenda.
Second.
Thank you. That's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Juarez,
Yes.
Ms. Cologne,
Yes.
Mr. Ailey,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. That motion carries. Next, our students report.
Hey, everyone. So after the council meeting last week, I have gathered some important details I'll put the bad one out of the way. There has been concerns over some inappropriate symbols at Hill House High School. Specifically, the inappropriate symbols were put in on the girls' bathroom, mainly the one on the bottom floor and the top. And the concern was things that shouldn't be happening like this and who caused this incident. What I know so far is that the principal at the time sent a letter to the parents saying that these things shouldn't be happening, but the students want to see who actually done this. Maybe it's from like a sports game, maybe it's something else. And second and last, we are in the process of preparing the mid-year student liaison report that will probably be shown next board meeting. So I'm looking forward to that.
And then I also have some 3 students to introduce, 3 sophomores that are that do want to run for student representative. So I have Yoselet, she's a sophomore at Hill House. They're all 3 in the back over there. I have Melanie from sophomore school, from Sound School. I'm so sorry. Also a sophomore, and then Lutz from HSC. And so they're here today just to like see what a board meeting is about and kind of just see how all of this runs. So I really appreciate them being here, and I hope this is a fun experience. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Any discussion? Yes, Mr. Wilcox.
Yeah, I'll just say that it is awesome to have you all here this evening, and I hope that you continue the process of exploring your candidacy, because you have some good colleagues here, and we've always had good student reps. And so I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here. Thank you very much.
Also want to thank you for being present. And Ms. Colon, thank you for introducing them and bringing them here as part of what it is to participate. I look forward to Ms. Downer and also Dr. White as they work on the student election process. You are in good hands. For the student report, I look forward to the mid-year student liaison report that will come in a future board meeting. And as well, I'm grateful to hear about the student leaders meeting and talking about school culture and climate and what happens and what can be done to make it a welcoming place for everyone. If answers come to the specific questions, I look forward to the students taking a leadership role and how they continue to make the place welcoming for everyone. And if answers don't necessarily come, hopefully there'll be enough positive peer pressure to keep the environment what it should be for everyone in NHPS. So thank you very much for those reports.
Thank you.
Dr. Negron. Next is our superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Yarborough. I am going to ask Dr. White if he could facilitate or clicker to make this a little easier. He's going to set us up with the presentation.
And Dr. Negron, I have a request that as you present or as your team presents, that you will go through the whole presentation so that the board can get a full picture. Board members, I ask us to hold our questions to the end as much as we can so that we can receive and intake the full presentation, as I know some things are interconnected. So Dr. Negron, if you and your team could move through, that would be great.
Thank you. And before I begin, I do want to acknowledge a very small team that was instrumental in putting together what we're bringing forth to you today. So I do want to take a moment to thank Michelle Bonanno, our supervisor of Magnet and Grants Program. I want to thank Juanita Masique, our Central Office Business Director. I want to thank John Nguyen, our Supervisor of Research Assessment and Evaluation. And last but not least, I want to thank Tiffany Jackson, our Executive Director of Pupil Services, Special Education. So today I am here joined by our CFO, Amilcar Hernandez, to share with you my proposed operating budget for fiscal year 27. It's great to know that my technology is working. And for the public, just bear with me. We have a lot of information to go through today, and we want to take our time to continue to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in being clear about what we are presenting to you today. So as we present the fiscal year 2027 operating budget proposal, we stand at a defining moment for New Haven Public Schools. This proposal is not merely a request for funding. It is a formal testament to the resilience of our students and the efficacy of our strategic investments. As I have outlined for you, Board of Education members, in the new and improved draft budget book that I share with you tonight, our collective efforts have yielded significant gains in teaching, learning, and school culture, evidenced by steady rise in student achievement across our interim assessment measures. We are seeing remarkable progress in foundational skills among our kindergartners, particularly in literacy, language, and numeracy development. In grades 3 through 10, the data confirms that our instructional strategies are working. Over 50% of our students reach 100% of their typical growth targets in reading, while over 30% achieve a remarkable 150% growth, as evident by last year's Smarter Balance assessment results. Our students' average percentage of growth target achieved in the Smarter Balance assessment grew by 3.5 percentage points, reaching 54.7% last year in comparison to the 51.2% in the year prior. In mathematics, we have focused intently on dismantling the barriers of math anxiety to strengthening our Tier 1 instruction and targeted 2 interventions. These efforts resulted in a 2.9 percentage point increase in proficiency last year. Beyond specific subject mastery, our systemic improvements are reflected in the secondary level's rising success. We proudly reported that our graduation rate has increased by 7 percentage points, from 72.5 in 23-24 to 79.5% in 24-25, a clear indicator that our support systems are steering more students towards the finish line. This is bolstered by a 6.3 increase in 9th grade on-track rates, ensuring our high schoolers build the necessary foundation for success from their very first year as freshmen. We are ensuring that all our graduates leave our halls with a concrete post-secondary plan. I want to remind you that last year, our graduates pursued diverse and ambitious paths. In higher education, 46.4% of our students enroll in 4-year colleges, and 26.1% enroll in 2-year colleges. As it relates to vocational and specialized training, 8.5% move to trades or VOC programs, while 3.2% pursue certifications at 2-year institutions. And in workforce and service, 5.9% joined the workforce directly after graduating last year, and 2.2% went directly to serve in the military. I also want to remind you that we have expanded our 6 career pathways: bioscience, business, culinary, education, healthcare, and manufacturing, and that these programs just last year alone led to 158 industry certificates. By prioritizing our strategy of connectedness and belongingness, we're also successfully reducing chronic absenteeism. And you may recall that we celebrated the fact that we were able to reduce that percentage by 5.4 percentage points. Our school climate survey reflects this shift, showing an increase in favorable responses from students and families who feel a renewed sense of partnership with our schools. And pretty soon, we are going to have our third-party vendor give us the results for culture and climate results. I will hear that this coming Friday, and then I will bring that data to you so that you can also see how we are doing this year. But I wanted to lift that to remind the public that we built a plan together. We are committing to our mission to empower every student to thrive in a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment, and that we're very clear about our vision, that we want to make sure that we are inspiring and empowering and equipping every single one of our students, and that we are being guided by our core values. It doesn't matter what happens out there in our state political climate or state climate or federal climate. We are staying the course with the path to excellence that we build together, with the targets that we are setting out to achieve, being driven by our core values that we share, so that we can get there in 2029. I also want to remind you that we built a timeline, a very clear timeline on how we were going to build this budget and bring it to you and to the community. I want to remind folks that this process started in late October, in November, when we engaged our entire community in a thought exchange survey to let us know what was important, what we should be protecting. I gave you the results of that survey. We also laid out and did a process overview with all of our school administrators and our leaders back in early November. Our leaders then worked through their own school budgets. In December, we engaged in those budget conversations. The CFO and I, and members of cabinet and the executive team joined me to go through all of these community budget conversations, to engage the community, hear their questions, provide answers in the moment. So reminding you that that process took place in late January and early February, and that we have engaged in ongoing conversations in F&O to talk about our budget. And here we are today to make the formal presentation of our fiscal year 27 budget requests. And that from here, we are not done. We will then engage in a Board of Alders budget hearing that's already scheduled for the end of April. And then we are going to continue to hear what's going to happen at the state level, hoping that that's going to help us, so that hopefully in June, you as a board, with all of those pieces better known, can approve this budget. I also want to remind you and the public that we are keeping the statements that we have made before you. We said that this budget development process will be guided by one central question and one goal, and that was to respond to the voices that said they wanted more transparency. That is why, since November, we have been speaking about the budget. We have been open about the budget, how we were going to tackle the development process. We're being guided by transparency that is being informed not by one voice, two voices, but by all the voices or diverse stakeholder perspectives, because we ultimately want to achieve equity across all of our schools. So I wanted to remind people about that goal, that we're staying committed with that goal. And as I mentioned, I'm very happy to share with you today, we have developed a new and improved budget book. The budget book that I gave you today, board members. That budget book includes new and improved information. It includes a further explanation of what we're going to present to you today in the slide deck. It will explain and go into depth around our operating budget requests and the drivers, the operating budget by function, the major grants budget by function, along with the school budget section, in the central service budget section, and a glossary to help you navigate the technical terms. I want to add for the public and for the paper that I see here in the room, the draft of that budget book will be made available to the entire public electronically. After tonight, after I get a chance to present to my board, the people that I answer to, and field their questions, we will take that on tonight. And our plan is to make this budget book draft. I want to highlight it is a draft. That is what a budget book does. It is a moment in time that will be linked to the page that through this budget process, we have made available to the public to be transparent and put everything up there in one place for the budget to see. We're not hiding anything. We're being an open book. As I told you last year, I am keeping my word because as a superintendent, from the moment you hire me and the public that was part of the hiring process, I told you that I pride myself 30 years in the business by my integrity. And I'm not shying away from my integrity. So today, I hope that you will indulge me in this long presentation. Next, I want to share with you what it is that we are prioritizing in this budget. You heard me at the beginning share the data that you've heard me share before about the wins that we've had as a district, where we are celebrating because of the amazing work that our teachers are doing, that our administrators are doing, that our students are doing, that our parents are doing, that all of us are doing as a collective. You heard me share the celebrations. To continue that upward trajectory, we must protect the investments that made all of those successes possible. We must sustain the current level of full-time employees to ensure that every student has access to high-quality core instruction and the interventions and the enrichment services that they require. We must protect the dedicated personnel who staff our attendance teams and support our families in overcoming barriers to education. This budget safeguards our integrated instructional models that we have created and that we continue to define and deepen and expand to support our special education students and our multilingual learners, protecting the arts, protecting athletics, and protecting the professional learning opportunities that keep our educators at the forefront of the field. For too long, for way too long, this district has been asked to do more with less. We continue to do it because that's who we are as the New Haven Public Schools. That is the pedigree of our teachers, our educators, our parents, and our students. But I want to remind you again and say it again. This district has been asked to do more with less. Today, we ask for the resources necessary to do what is right. And on behalf of the students of the New Haven Public Schools who deserve an education that is both high quality and stable, I urge you to support the fiscal year 27 budget. And with that, I am now going to turn it over to my CFO to unpack for us the budget key drivers behind the requests that we are making before you tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Negron, and good evening to the members of the board and the audience, not only here, but also watching us online. So yes, as Dr. Negron mentioned, it's a quite a long presentation. We'll make it as easily digestible as possible, and I'll go as quick as I can, but not too quick that then you won't be able to capture the information. So bear with me for the next 125 slides. I'm just kidding, just kidding, just kidding. Just kidding. I only got like 21 more slides or so. But let's start with the budget key drivers, right? And this is just a very general, high level, just slide just to start with this foundation. The conversation after this slide will, I will go a little deeper into some of these, and then we'll also deviate from the key drivers and also speak about some other areas that are of interest to the public as we've gone through all these months, speaking to the community and to the different stakeholders. We now understand, some of the areas that are of key interest. So we also will touch base on some of those as well. So I'm supposed to be going through this slide and reading what you can see already. I will just speak to some of those, and then we'll just keep moving. And then at the end, we'll have some opportunities for some questions. So I will just focus on, on the first one, I will actually take this back. I actually have to read this one. So on the first one, the personnel cost and the contractual salary increases for teachers and staff. That's obviously a major key driver. I've mentioned this in the past, that the personnel cost is the biggest expense of the school district. And it is the same in any organization, in not only just government organization, but just in any place, nonprofit, the private sector always is the biggest cost. But it also comes with the great title of, this is also where our biggest asset lies, right? Like our personnel is our biggest asset. So it only makes sense that the most important component of our organization is the one that carries, the biggest cost, right? Because we have to compensate them accordingly. There's also a need to maintain competitive wages to attract and retain talent. We've talked about that, especially during negotiations. That was a huge highlight, right? We want to be able to retain the staff. So it's not only compensate for what I deserve to be compensated, but also do it because it's the only way to retain staff, right? And it only makes sense, right? So that is a key, budget driver. On the student needs, I'll go a little deeper on this one. When we say growth in special education services, it is in order for us to address the continued upward trajectory of special education enrollment, and we'll see a slide about the enrollment for special education at a later time, which necessitates a strategic expansion of specialized staff to maintain compliance with mandated service hours and mental health support. So that is extremely important. It's not just that it sounds good that we want to provide resources for the growth of special education. It's also a mandate, and it's also our mandate, as a human
as a person that cares for our children, it's common sense. Like we want to be able to provide our students with the best service that we could possibly provide beyond just the fact that it's a state mandate for us to do so. And then the evolution of multilingual support to address its complexity. I want to really expand a little bit on what we mean by the evolution of multilingual support. That is a transition from managing growth to addressing the increased complexity and depth of need within stabilized population requiring more nuanced, high-tier interventions for long-term English learners. I know this because I was one of them. I did my whole high school in a bilingual program, not knowing any English whatsoever at the age of 14 to the age of 16. And that's how I had to, learn English and be part of society. And here I am today. So I'm grateful for the multilingual service that I received in high school, which is when I learned English, or at least what you hear coming out of my mouth. I hope it is still English, but it is close enough that you understand what I'm saying, right? It's good enough, I would say. So then we have the operational costs, right? And we've talked about this, quite a bit. These are the ones that are more visible for people. These are the transportation and fuel increases, the facility maintenance increases, and that conversation has been a conversation that this district has had for years and years and years. Maintaining our buildings and how the cost of maintaining our buildings have increased year over year. So these are the budget key drivers, among other ones, and we'll go in depth into some of those as we go along. On the next slide, I do have the control of this.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, this is fun. On the next slide, so we have the district enrollment as of October 1st, and this is a 10-year snapshot. And this is what we all know to be true, like how enrollment has decreased over time. Obviously now at this year, 2025, fiscal year 2025, we have a 17,000, can't even see this number from here.
837.
837, there you go. I have it really small on my computer. Let me make it bigger. There you go. So we've seen the decrease of enrollment. And this is some of the comments that I've heard, lately is, but Amilcar, if the enrollment keeps going down, how do you explain how the cost keeps going up? How do you explain why transportation keeps going up and teachers' salaries keep going up and all these things keep going up but enrollment keeps going down, right? So I hope that at the end of this presentation, we're able to paint a picture, to provide a little bit more clarity on that. And if I don't, please ask me that question at the end. I want to make sure that we leave tonight with clarity on how that works, right? How the correlation between enrollment and the cost of doing business, right, in a school district. So this one is important for us to touch base. But in a nutshell, you could have, I'll give you just one quick example. You could have in a classroom, you could have 20 students, or you could have 16 students, or you could have 23 students. Any of those three numbers, 15, 20, or 23, still requires one teacher. Now, there's a big difference between 15 students and 23 students. That's 8 students difference. 8 student difference could be easily revenue of about $100,000 that we won't get from the state, just because of those 8 students. $100,000 easily pays for the salary of that one teacher that's in that classroom. But now we just lost those 8 students, but we still have to pay the teacher. So that's a very easy example, all right? And this is not the case this is just the case that just came to mind now, but there's a lot of cases where you could also say, well, you have a school facility that has 300 students and you have to pay electricity, you have to pay gas, you have to pay all these utilities, but that school now has only 200 students. The building didn't shrink. The building is still the same size. You still have to heat the whole entire building. You still have electricity in the entire building, but you have 100 students less. So all these things, there's a correlation between enrollment and cost, and there is also a no correlation in between enrollment and cost. And this is one example of how that correlation doesn't quite align. You could have less students, but the cost keeps either stay the same or keeps going up based on inflation, which is another conversation, right? The inflation is also another component that's important for us to keep in mind when we're talking about cost, even when enrollment goes down. But we'll touch base on these as we go along. There's a lot of slides, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. On the next slide, we have this beautiful, colorful slide that shows three different cohorts. And if I'm able to make this bigger on my end. There you go. So we have first the eligible for free or reduced price meals. That will be the first section on the left side. Then on the middle, we have the English language learners. And then at the end, we have students with disabilities. So this is the enrollment for these three cohorts. Now, I do want to point out the multilingual learners cohort, which is the one in the middle. This is the first year, for the first time, that we have a decline in this particular population, and that's to be expected given the political climate that we live right now. While the population of multilingual learners has stabilized for the first time this year, the complexity of student needs continues to escalate. We're seeing a sustained significant rise in students requiring special education services, and that will be on the right section, although the bars, they kind of almost looks the same by naked eye. I want you to take a look at the last two between the green and the yellow. There's 101 student difference there, if I'm not mistaken. I can't see the numbers well, but I do know that it's supposed to be 101 student difference. Alongside a high baseline of multilingual learners, to meet these compounding requirements, we must provide a proportional increase in specialized intervention staff and mandated mental health support. I won't get too deep into the special education enrollment and the needs because I do have like about 4 or 5 slides dedicated to special education. So we can have a deeper conversation about that component. But I did wanted to note that these are specialized cohorts of students that require more targeted efforts and a more sustained, it's a little bit more complex, the type of education and support that they require, which increase the cost of our services. On the next slide, there you go. Now we have that special education component that I just told you, the next 4 or 5 slides. So this is a student with disabilities enrollment. This one, a little bit more clear, shows that 101 students different. So I will give you like a little overview of what this chart says. So between 21 and 22, there's an increase of 24 students. Between 22 and 23, there's an increase of 34 students. Between 23 and 24, there's an increase of 57 students. And then lastly, between 24 and 25, there's an increase of 101 students. So I will kind of put those numbers next to each other, 24, 34, 57, 101. Do you see the trend there? For the last 4 years, the addition of special education service students has increased. In fact, this last year, the increase was almost doubled. So I was thinking, okay, maybe the increase is every year, we add the same number of students plus 10 or 15 more. But then this last year was the same number of students plus another 44 students, so it kind of almost doubled. And it would be responsible of me to not see this trend and not prepare our district for potential increases in special education, given what we're seeing lately. And we have heard in another meeting, our Executive Director of People Services and Special Education talked about how we get these students not only before October 1st, but even beyond October 1st, which is an issue in itself, right? We get these numbers of students that come with IEPs from other school districts or other towns or other areas, and it's a cost that we are not accounted for in the budget that we still have to provide services for. One child could cost anywhere between $80,000 to $250,000. This is in the special education services, anywhere between $80,000 to $250,000, depending on the services needed, depending on what the IEP mandates for us to provide. We have right now 43 specialized classrooms, 1 new each year since 2015. So since 2015, we've added 1 new every single year. We currently have 290 students enrolled in New Haven Public Schools operated specialized classrooms. So we have the data, we have the numbers, we're seeing the trend, and we also understand what the cost is to service this population. So we have to be cognizant of this and prepare a budget that not only meet the demands of this fiscal reality, but more importantly, that provides a quality service to our children. On this slide, you have a little bit more detail regarding the special education service budget. Now, this is the operating budget. This is only general fund budget. And I say this because on the next few slides, you're gonna see some examples of how a special education is so complex that the general fund alone is not even near enough. And as you see on the screen, we're talking about almost $72 million just from the general fund for special education services. $72 million is about 33% of our entire general fund budget. And that's not even enough. And because of that, on the next few slides, you're gonna see a little bit more information about what it is that we have to do as a district to make sure that our students receive the services they need beyond what we can support with our general fund. So again, special education students make up about 18% of our enrollment. Yet, that 18% of our enrollment requires 33% of our general fund budget. Special education outplacement tuition has written $6.3 million over the last 5 years. $6.3 million over the last 5 years. That's just the outplacement tuition. And we've talked about tuition several times in other presentations as one of the key drivers of our budget. We currently have 278 resident students in an outplaced setting, all requiring tuition. All of them requiring us to pay tuition, and every single one of them goes beyond the amount of funding that we receive from the state, because as I said before, special education services is not just what the state provides or the local government provides. It goes beyond, again, because of the level of service that they require. And again, it could go between $80,000 and $250,000, and it's just the reality that we live. Now, these, as I said before, this particular budget that you see in front of you does not include any additional funds to cover other special education expenses using special funds. And I'll go into that special funds component in just a little bit. I know that in the past, when we present budgets, line item budgets as these, there's always question about what is this, what is that. So I'll just give you a little bit of what some of these are, just so at least, hopefully, you could get the conversation going. So on the first one, tuition, this particular one for special education, a good chunk of it goes to any ACES operated locations. A portion of it also goes to some of the charter schools that we also have to pay our special education students to attend to. On the personnel, some examples of personnel that are covered by this particular line item from the general fund are speech and language pathologists, an occupational therapist, and anywhere from any of those services. Even some of the staffing from any of the charter schools that we have to send students to. Transportation, as an example, in this particular case, just give you an example. I know transportation is much a bigger conversation, but just to give you an example, we have right now 64 vans that cost about $93,000 each. These are all based on IEP requirements. We contracted for 57 vans. So right now we're using 7 more vehicles, vans. I'm talking about school buses, vans, 7 more at $93,000 each. That's just somewhere between $650,000 and $700,000 more over the budgeted amount based on the 57 vans that we originally allocated for. And so this is just an example of how the transportation cost could easily fluctuate up or down only based on IEP requirements. So at the beginning of the school year, especially now that we're doing a budget for next year, we're doing it based on the students that we have, based on the trends that we see. But at any given time, the numbers of students can fluctuate substantially. And for each student, it comes with a cost that goes way beyond what we receive from the state for each of the students. In some cases, you have to, depending on the location of the student, you have to get a van for 1 or 2 students or even 3 students. And even when you add up everything we get for each of those students, it doesn't even pay for the full cost of that van, which is $93,000. And in order for you to be able to get enough revenue to pay just for the van, and this is not even talking about the teachers that will provide the services and any other cost, you will have to fill up that van with at least 5 students, and just to pay for that van. And then now you don't have any more money to pay for the teachers, for the support staff, for the paraprofessionals, social workers, and any of the other expenses. So those dynamics have to be clear, that every time we receive funding for one student, you have to account for the cost of that student as a whole, not just that student receives services from this one teacher, this second teacher, or these 3 or 4 different staff on the school level. Yeah, what about transportation? What about some of the other components of things that we have to pay for to support the student? And this is just one example that I felt it was easy for us to understand and to digest and see the dynamics when we receive funding for special education students. When we look at the contracts line item, that's where we have some of the contracts that I saw under there were the sign language contracts, behavioral therapist contracts. So these are contracts that we are mandated to employ and to have in order to provide our students the services they require and they need. Because we do not have all the resources we need to meet the demands and needs of our special education students, we rely on grants or special funds to make these services available. An example is on our next slide when we talk about IDEA. So let's go to our next slide. IDEA grant expenditure. So I selected 2 different special education grants that I felt were easy to explain the dynamics between the general fund and the special funds, and to show how much sometimes we have to rely on grants in order for us to provide the basic services of our students. Let me first define what IDEA means. This is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So this is a grant. It provides federal funding to the state for special education and early intervention services for children with disabilities, ages 3 through 21. So that's what this is. When you look at that chart and you look at the data that's there, you can see that out of the $7 million, 3.2, in fact, I would say 3.8 when you include the employee benefits, goes towards full-time staff. Then you have the tutors, then you have people services, and then you have some of the other categories that we have to employ this funding for. Now, you saw the budget for special education at a previous slide for the $71 million, almost 72. And 33% of our general fund, and anyone can say, well, that's a lot of money for special education. And I will say, not nearly enough. Because we have to rely on these grants in order for us to really provide these services. And even then, we need more because our students deserve more. So IDEA is one example of how we break down the cost of this grant. Now, I have heard some folks talk about, we don't know what you do with special education funding. We don't know if you're using it to buy pencils for special education students, or you're using it for this or for that. And they make this very blanket general statement. And it's really hard, right, to answer that question, because you're like, well, I don't know that I know, how much one pencil costs in a school district that buys hundreds of thousands of pencils every year. But I will tell you this, every single time we use any special education funding, it's coded as a special education expense. And we could tell you exactly what we purchased with that special education funding. The problem is that on the other side, what people see is just supplies coming into the classroom, distributed to all the students, regular students, special education students, multilingual learner students, and have no idea if that one box of pencils or that one box of whatever supply is was paid with one funding or the other. And that's what the people see with their eyes, because they are not on this side, and they don't see the amount of reporting that we have to do every single time we use special education funding. We have to categorize every single item that we purchase with this funding, and we have to account for it. There's oversight entities that come to our district to audit our expenses. Special education expenses are not just the only one, but this is one that's actually very well audited. This is one that not only the state, but the federal government on a continuous basis are looking exactly how we're spending this money. So I want to make sure that, for those folks that don't understand how we allocate and how we report expenses for special education and other cohorts and other funding, rest assured that we do have this coded in a way that we could easily identify how we use the money and for what particular purpose. This grant allocation you see there is exactly how we budget our expenses. Our system does not allow for you to use more than what's already allotted for that line unless you request a budget modification, which in the case of these grants is not that easy. It's not that easy, whether it's a state or the federal government to request a budget modification. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of intentionality, and you have to be able to provide a good business case in order for you to make these changes. So our system is built in a way that doesn't allow you to go beyond what's there. And it's not just us, because when we send these expenses to the city for the city to cut the check, they also have another layer of gatekeepers that will push it back to us and say, hey, Amilcar, you guys just went over this number. I can't cut a check. I can't do this because you just went over it, right? So it's not just our decision alone. We have multiple layers of departments and personnel across not only BOE, but also the city that's keeping an eye and making sure that we are within budget. And that's a good thing, right? Sometimes it takes a little longer to get there, right? But it is a good thing that we have systems in place that make sure that we are in compliance, not only budgetarily, but also in the services that we're providing. So this is one example. In the IDEA grant, because if you look at this chart here, you will say, well, Amilcar, what do you mean by people services? What do you mean by, instructional, non-instructional? Those are very broad categories. I don't know what you mean by that. I've heard this before. I've presented categories of such before, and they always ask the same question. So this time, I came prepared. This time, I came ready to give you some details. So I'll give you some details now. Instructional, this 3.2 pays for 2 social workers, 2 speech and language pathologists, 2 psychologists, 1 hearing impaired, 3 visually impaired, 27 special education teachers, and 34 paraeducators. There it is. You wanted to know how many FTEs we could pay with 3.2 with this particular grant? There's the information. Pupil services, what are those contracts for? That 1.7. Oh, that 1.7 includes, nursing, include ACES behavioral, autism, healthcare, pediatric services, lifeline cares, Relay Hub, bilingual assessment, and many other contracts, that are necessary for special education services population. Benefits is all the personnel paid under IDEA, and benefits includes obviously, taxes and workers' compensation and health insurance and so on. Tutors are non-instructional. Non-instructional will be the administrative assistants, the data coordinators, supervisors, compliance coordinators, management analysts, all these other support staff that are critical for us not only to report back to IDEA, to the federal government, how we're using the money, but they're also critical in making sure that we are in compliance with the way we use the funding. And then supplies, it's self-explanatory, and unless somebody wants me to tell you that we buy pencils, pens, paper, supplies. And then indirect cost, it's the administrative cost to the district. So this is just one example broken down into a more deeper level. Any other grants that we receive, whether it's a state or federal, it's a very similar breakdown. We know exactly how much we pay for each category, and we know exactly who are we paying for and what's included in that particular category. The next and last component of IDEA, because IDEA is split into 2 different sections, the other one will be the preschool side of it, and that one is a much smaller. So you add the $7 million I showed you on 2 slides ago, plus this 100, almost 29,000. That is the full IDEA grant, and this one, similar to what we see in other grants, 61.6% pays for staffing and 38.4% pays for the benefits. Now, I will take an opportunity now that I've shown you 3 different examples of how many of our grants and even general fund works. I will take this opportunity to to tell you how dangerous it is for us to keep relying on grants to pay for the services for our students. Not only with my previous experience from other places that I've worked and that I've been involved, not only at the academic area, the school, but also in the nonprofit sector and the government sector, I've learned that it's beautiful and it's amazing when we get grants, right? We celebrate grants. We celebrate when we get them. It makes us happy because it gives us an additional funding for us to provide the services at the level that our students, our students deserve. But it can also create a very bad habit where we start functioning under the assumption that we're going to get this grant every single year. And now we start putting staff in there. Now staff salaries now are subject to the availability of that grant. What happens when that grant goes away? What do we do with the staffing, right? So it's very dangerous, a very dangerous business when we start doing that. Now, it is not it is not with bad intentions that we actually end up doing this, of putting staff in grants. It's only because we don't have enough in the general fund for us to sustain our staffing. So we have to move them to grants and use those special funds and grants to pay for our staff. Oftentimes when we apply for these grants, we do tell the funder that we're going to use it to pay for this staffing, right? Because we need these staff to provide the services that are mandated or that are part of the mission and vision of our superintendent. But at the same time, it would be even better if I could tell on the application that I'm going to use this funding to not only improve the service, but to add more services to our student, more quality service to our student, and not have to tell the funder that we're going to use the funding to pay teachers or to pay support staff. I want teachers and support staff to rest assured that the general fund has them covered. That's not going away. And I want to use the grants to improve, to expand the quality service that we provide to our children. That is the perfect world scenario. Now, I'll tell you this, and I gave you this premise because I want to skip to, this is a great time for me to go to this slide, which I'm going to skip now to slide 25, if you're following on the, because I think it's important for me now to show this. On slide 25, we have the major grants revenue and FTE count. I just mentioned to you the importance of us thinking strategically long-term for sustainability purposes. How do we bring our FTEs back to our general fund and start using grants in a more efficient way to improve the quality service to our students? This is a snapshot of how many of our FTEs are right now in our entire district rely on grants. 899 FTEs rely on grants. That's, if I'm not mistaken, that's about 34% of our FTEs rely on grants. That's 34% of our FTEs rely on grants. There is no guarantees that any of these grants will come back or will increase. I'll tell you this, Alliance and Priority, as of right now, is going to be flat funded for the upcoming years unless this legislative session takes a look at that and then changes. But this year was the last year of the phase-in increases. But our teachers will get increases this year, next year, and the following one. And they deserve to get increases every single year, period. Period. There's no question about that. But Alliance and Priority, who carries 236 FTEs between those two, will not increase anymore unless the state legislature decides to make some changes to the Alliance and Priority and continue the increases that we've had for the last 5 years. That's just one example of how critical it is for us to understand the dynamics between general funds, special funds, and how our FTEs are allocated between the two of them. Again, in a perfect world, all the FTEs should be the general fund, so we could use the grants to expand quality service, to improve our quality service. We have to tie it down to our staffing because, like I said before, that's our greatest asset. Without them, there's absolutely no quality education whatsoever. So we have to preserve our staffing, and we have to use grants for such a, in that manner. I'm gonna go back because it wasn't my intentional plan to skip to this slide, but I thought it was important for us to do so. So I'll go back to slide 14 if you're following on the paper copy. So this is the last grant that I'm going to show you regarding special funds. I'm sorry, special education. And this one, I want to really thank our state legislative body, our state delegation, because they work really hard to make sure that this seed grant it's in place. And here you can see how it also, again, following the same trend, it also pays for the lot of the staffing that provides special education, not only at the charter school, but also in some of the other schools that we have. So the seed grant, I'm gonna exactly say what it is, just for the benefit of our public. That's a special education expansion and development grant. It's a state grant aimed at increasing school district capacity to serve students with special needs locally. It provides flexible funding for staff recruitment, direct services, and development screenings. It is extremely important for us to track every single cent for special education students. I cannot say this enough. I cannot say enough that every single cent that we spend on special education students is tracked accordingly, not only as a whole Department of Special Education, but also even by grant and by location too. So if any time you ask me, how much have you spent in special education in that one particular school? The system will give it to me. We have it, we track it in that manner to that level. So I want to make sure there's no misinformation when it comes to special education. We track these expenses. This is not nothing new. I don't take credit for it. This has been in place way before I was here. It's always been the case. And this is another grant again that explains the dynamics between general fund, special education, the staffing FTEs, and this is just for special education, but the same applies to some of the other components of the school district beyond special education. On the next slide, I'm cognizant of the time, so I want to keep moving forward. If I can see, I will move to this one, staffing trends chart. On this one, let me move this down a little bit. My apologies. Oh, there you go. On this one, I want to point out just a few areas here. First of all, the one that I think we were asked at an earlier meeting, on the last one, the other staff providing non-instructional, and you see that 1,091 in 23-24. That one, I will have the information here. I forgot where Tiffany is. That one includes the bus drivers, and included the monitors, included some other staffing that were not included there in the past. And that's why the number increased substantially in that year. The way that the category, what the category included changed in that particular year. And then from that point on, then we kept that same standard. And that's, I almost forgot. See, that's exactly what happened. We included some additional positions that were not included in the past. And that's what created that big change. The line of paraeducators, I also want to mention, because that one also has a huge increase between last year and this year. The paraeducators are inclusive of multiple support positions, including the traditional classroom paraeducator, a special education paraeducator, teachers for our Head Start classrooms, student retention specialists, etc. So that line, it's just beyond just the paraeducator that we think about. So I want to make sure that we understand that so we can see why we have such an increase between the 482 and the 575 between one year and the other, as we keep reclassifying and moving the line items, then we are adjusting the numbers accordingly. So this is a staffing trend, and this is important information for us to understand not only where we are today, but also speaks to where we need to be in the future. At another slide, I will speak a little bit more about the staffing guidelines. And I think that there's a correlation between what we're seeing here, the staffing guidelines, and what it is that we need to do to achieve that goal. I'll get to that slide at a later time, but then just connect it back to this one, as you see the opportunity to do so. On the next one, on the next slide, we have the collective bargaining groups, projected increases. Again, these are just approximates, but so we have, for example, the school administrators for this coming year, there's an additional $620,000 that will be, that's contractually agreed upon to spend on that particular bargaining unit, in addition to what we already budgeted for this year. Then we have the cafeteria bargaining unit, that's at $119,000. The custodial, we're still currently in negotiations, but we're estimating that it could be somewhere between, about $124,000 more in salaries for the custodial. For the teachers, it's about $6.1 million for this coming year. And then for our paraeducators, $395,000. So when you add them all up, you have about $7.3 million just in increase of salaries, and that does not include the BOE, the trades, which is the second one there. We are waiting for negotiations. And so we are estimating somewhere between $7 and $8 million, in additional salaries for next year. And that's just, again, keeping status quo, keeping the same staffing, the same number, just contractual increases. On the next one, we have the transportation cost, the history cost. On this one, I want to take a point of privilege, if there's such a thing for a panelist. Yeah, okay, good. I always love to say that. I want to take a point of privilege. And I want to say this from the bottom of my heart, but in a very nice way. When we talk about transportation cost, there's no such thing as a debacle, right? When people use these kind of mischaracterizations, it goes along the lines of what we're seeing at the national level, right? And I was surprised to see that kind of misinformation and mischaracterization at a local level. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm shielded here from the nonsense that's happening in Washington, D.C. And then I wake up this morning finding out that we have that kind of nonsense happening in New Haven. I'm like, that can't be true. We cannot be providing this level of misinformation and mischaracterization of what I said or what we're presenting. So, well, it is what it is, right? That's some of the things that we have to deal with. But I want to make sure that people understand there is no such thing as a debacle, as a budget debacle, especially when we talk about transportation. It was very clearly explained, and I will explain it again, just for those that need that clarification. The transportation line item, I said in the past that for this year, it was under budgeted. Let me just first say this. Under budgeted line items happen everywhere at all times. It just happens, right? Your budget, based on the information that you have today, on the data that you have today, it's a point in time decision. Under budgeted line items happen everywhere all the time. Now, given the fact that we have spent in the past, as you see in the chart, and this shows that we're not shying away from the facts and the data, that we spent $33, $35, $39 million in transportation, and we budgeted between 30 and 32, depending on what categories you include in transportation. In this particular case, I'm using this particular breakdown that says that we budgeted $32 million. You will say, well, Maker, you did on the budgeted. Then no, well, not me, but the district on the budgeted, right? I'm like, sure, we did. But then ask me why. And I'll tell you what I said before. When we are in the process of budget development, and this is what's going to happen in the next 2 months, unfortunately, we have to get to a point where we have to present a balanced budget. And we have to present a mitigation plan. And we have to, beyond that mitigation plan, we have to cut line items in order to present a balanced budget. So it could be approved, and we could be in compliance. And we hope and we work really hard to implement that mitigation plan. Put it in place without cutting our services to a point that it's not beneficial to our children. This year, we are seeing, from the beginning, we're seeing the trends of the cost of transportation. So technically, you have two decisions, two options. Either you continue providing the services, or you say, well, we're just cutting down these routes. We're not providing services anymore. But then you have to deal with the consequences of doing so without preparing a good plan to transition any of those changes. Then you see an increase on absenteeism. You see increase on, on some of the other negative impacts that it will have not to provide the service at the level that we're providing it right now, unless you provide a plan to transition between one form of transportation to another form. You put a plan together, you strategize, and you make sure that every student receives the services they need, and then you prioritize how you're going to provide that service. So this year, we said, we're not touching that. We're going to continue providing the services. We are not impacting our children in such a way that then they don't make it to school or that they don't receive the services they need to receive. So unfortunately, the cost keeps increasing. The needs, as I mentioned to you in a previous example of special education students that require a different level of transportation, continues to increase. So we're going to provide the service. And us as leadership, it's our responsibility now to figure out how we're going to pay for it. It's not the responsibility of our students. They shouldn't have to pay for our decisions. We have to now make decisions of how are we going to deal with this deficit. If we're overspending this line item because we budgeted at this level, we have to figure it out. It is my job as a CFO to take the lead on that effort and figure out how we're going to pay for this, how we're going to cover this expense. In what other areas can I create more efficiencies to create enough savings to cover this expense? That's my job. My job and the job of my team to come up with a plan to do so. So there's no debacle. It's mostly a decision for us to prioritize the education of our students over staying within a budget line item at the cost of the quality of service to our children. I make this decision a million times more every single year if I have to, because I am not going to jeopardize the service of our children. There's no debacle. It's very easily understood. I explain it in less than 2 minutes. No debacle. So in comparison, I want to make sure that, for those of you that are very mathematical driven and that are looking at the numbers, I welcome all those questions. If you looked at slide number 10, I will go back just because I want to, and I want to make sure that you get that answer. If you look at the third line, it says special education transportation, 5,590,970. Special education transportation from the general fund, almost 5.6. Now I'm showing you a slide that says on the second line, special education transportation, the budget says 5,273,895. And then you say, but Amilcar, wait a second, same year, same fiscal year, you're giving me two different numbers. It's off by 316,375. Yes, it is. But I want to explain to you why. So I'm going to give you the answer before you ask the question, because I know one of you already thought about it. So I'm giving you the answer right now. This line that's a little less off does not include the portion of special education transportation to technical schools, the bus passes, and the inter-district transportation for special education students. All right? So this is for the special education students. Those three that I just mentioned to you that add up to 316,375 is not included in this chart. It is included on the other one. That's the only difference. It's just broken down differently. It just happens to have the same name, special education transportation, but one includes those three components, the other one doesn't. Are we clear? We good? All right, good, perfect. Other than that, this chart, what it does is that it helps me figure out potential savings on outplacement transportation due to the creation of the Wexler program. So that's what we are, counting on some savings there. And then another opportunity that we have by looking at this transportation cost history is that it kind of pushed us to start assessing our transportation capacity usage on specific school and routes that have shown opportunities to maximize and create more efficiency, which in turn turns into more savings. So what we're doing with this is not only being transparent, but also it's a tool for us to get to work, right? When we see a trend that says 33, 35, 39, and then this year, we could probably hit about 39 or 40 again, somewhere close to same as last year with our projections. We're saying, okay, hold on. We're seeing the trend here. We got to get to work. How it is that we can mitigate this increase of expenses in transportation, and let's have some serious conversations about what the opportunities are. So we have already identified 2 different opportunities. There are some other ones that in the upcoming months, we're going to be having conversations, not only internally, but also with the board. You will also be getting a presentation, I believe, on April 6th. Mr. Wilcox, is it April 6th for transportation? I think April 6th, you will be getting, yes, that's a Monday, April 6th, you will receive a more in-depth conversation about transportation. And that's purposely done in order for us to get this conversation going, not only for the board to understand better what the transportation structure looks like, but it will help us just have these conversations, right? Because there's a lot of different opportunities. And I am one that's up for it. I would love to explore opportunities to save in transportation. Now, I do want to also, another piece that's also being misinformed is the belief that we have a contract, let's say with our main service provider, like First Student. America, that contract is for $30 million, or the number, whatever the number it is, for depending on which components you look on the contract. But you're already spending 32. But I also have to make sure that you understand this is not just First Student. This is transportation as a whole. It's First Student, but it is also many other transportation providers, not only taxi cabs, but also a lot of other smaller LLC companies that provide, private transportation door to door. There's a lot of different transportation companies beyond just First Student. So these numbers reflect, transportation costs as a whole. It's not just First Student. So please do not take any transportation budget that you see and mimic it or try to put it next to just the First Student contract. That is not apples to apples. If you want to know exactly how much we spend in First Student, that's a different conversation. But my job right now is to provide you with the full entire budget of transportation. All right. Next one. I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I want to make sure we get this done as quick as possible. The next one will be the school-based allocation model. This is the one that speaks, about the equity-driven resource allocation, the targeted support for closing gaps. I've talked to you about the idea of allocating a little bit more funding for special education students and multi-language learner students. The calculation came out to be that we allocated an additional $24 for multi-language learner students and an additional $34 for students with disabilities. My hope is to keep increasing that allocation year after year. We understand that this is just the beginning. This is just us, not just testing the waters, but also trying to use a limited funding, general funding, to give a little bit more to areas of our services that require a little bit more complex, support. So this is just the beginning. And one of the reasons that I want to make sure that we all know what that number is because I want you next year to say, Amilcar, last year you gave 24 additional. Can you make it 30? Can you make it 35, right? Push me to make it more because that is my goal. And I expect our board to support me in that goal to keep providing more funding to a population that requires more funding because of the complexities of the services that they require. So we allocated $200,000 just for this particular effort, just to start with. I wanted to allocate more than that, and we'll see how the budget goes in the upcoming months. And if that's something that we can, change, we will do so. But there are many areas that we have already identified as also priorities. So we'll have to, have those conversations. On the next slide, we have the famous staffing guidelines. I presented this in our budget workshop, and I spoke a little bit about it. We've updated some of the information here. But as a reminder, for those of you that don't remember exactly what this chart meant, back in fiscal year 22-23, you adopted the staffing guidelines to define the level of staffing necessary in our schools by category. We're not there yet. I don't see anyone here surprised, which is good. You're not surprised because, we're not there yet. But it is not something that we're going to stop bringing up because it is still our goal to comply with your mandate. So in order to get there, we will still need another $26.8 million. So this is in addition to the request that we are presenting today. So none of the numbers that you will see in towards the end of the presentation, which is where I'm going to talk about the full budget, include this amount. Dr. Negron?
I just want to add that we also linked, if you click on the staffing guidelines, it takes you to the document that was adopted in 22-23, just as a reference.
Right. So it is our goal, and we will continue to bring it up because it is what our children deserve, and that's our goal, to achieve that goal. That didn't sound right. That is our goal, to achieve that goal. So on the next one, the next slide, historical budget request. We've seen this one before. It's sadly, it's one of my favorite ones, but it is because one that when it was presented to me, it really, really told me the story, because this is from way before my time, and it really kind of helped me understand, how we're doing. And I will say that even though it still shows a huge gap every year, we continue to see the commitment of our local elected officials by every year adding, whether it's $8 million or $5 million, and hopefully 5 more this year. And if I keep saying it out loud, maybe it turns into 10, and we'll see. The more I say it, I hope that it just keeps multiplying. I don't know if that's how it works, but the more I say it, hopefully it keeps multiplying. But it is the commitment of our local officials, to continue supporting our school system. So we're seeing some progress. The problem here, and the reason why this chart is important, is because it's not enough. And it's not enough, and we've heard this conversation many times, because the state is not doing their part to also keep up with the not only inflation, but also the increase of cost, and to support our teachers, to support our school staff that deserve not only the increases that they are getting, but more than that. I don't think that there is a level of agreement that we could make with any bargaining unit for their salary increases that will do justice to the work that they do. I've always said that teachers should be getting paid like lawyers and doctors, and that is the reality, right? And unfortunately, our funding doesn't allow for us to get that far. But the state knows that's my thinking, and I'm sure that a lot of you share that same thought. So it is something that I'm hoping that our state delegation keeps pushing for. We've been in many conversations with them, and they are very committed to the conversation. And we're seeing some progress. We're seeing some conversations. So in the upcoming months, we'll learn a little bit more about how far we're going to move on that line, on that area. But this historical chart, tells you what our request was, what the approved budget was, and what the gap is. And it's important for me to share this because once I disclose the budget request, I want you to see it from the perspective of, we're not doing anything different than any other year. This is a problem that continues to happen year after year. Any request that we make is substantiated by actual cost. And in our case, in our particular case, it's status quo. We're asking for us to keep us at status quo. I will explain that a little bit more, because status quo doesn't do justice to my request, to our request. So I'll explain that when we get to that slide. But this historical data is important for us to understand where we've been and where we continue to be if we don't do something extraordinary, if we don't actually get what our children deserve to receive for their education. Our next slide just is kind of like a byproduct of the previous one. I just gave you the general fund expenditures for each of the last 3 and this year the projected, and you could see the trend. It's kind of like almost like a straight line. I was surprised to see that straight line like that. It's just by pure coincidence. It just came out to be 195, 203, 213, and then we're projecting about 222 for this year. So our general fund expenditures keeps growing up at a pace that we cannot keep up with. And again, I thank our local elected officials for trying to, keep up with it, but it's just impossible at this rate, right? When you are increasing your general expenditures by $8 million, then you increase it by 10, and now it's going to be by about 9 or 10 more. It's really hard. And this is where we are asking our other stakeholders, especially our state legislator and our governor, to really take a look at this and say, hey, these are the real true expenses. Our books are open. You can see line by line. You can see exactly how we're spending the money. This is not luxury. This is our expenses that we require to have in order to provide quality services. Our next slide just gives you a little bit of a budget revenue by funding source. Here you can see how our ECS non-alliance, which is the $142.5 million, it's basically 42% of our general fund. And then you could see the local funds of almost $71 million equates to almost 21% of our budget. And then you have our state grants. And the state grants is the one that includes the non-alliance funding. I just want to make sure that non-alliance is included here. It's just under the state funding that says $75 million. And then you see the other ones that are a little bit smaller. But here's the breakdown. And again, this is another picture that shows you how much we have to rely in funding outside of the general fund in order for us to provide the services that we provide. And again, in a perfect world, we want most of our expenses to be covered by general funds so we could use grants for expansion, improvement, create more programming for our children, provide them more opportunities. And so this is a picture that also shows you how much we have to rely on grants, state, federal grants to run our district. Our next slide. This one is the alliance revenue. So, we took a look at the alliance revenue across different districts, and I was a little surprised to see that New Haven is the one that received the least amount of alliance revenue per pupil. You see there, the amount of money is the $1,505 per student compared to some other districts that go up to 5,000. So the average, I think, is 3,000. Oh, it's actually there. $3,156 per student of the alliance funding. So this is one area that we would like to explore. We would like to bring up to the attention to understand, sometimes, it's the inequities, and I'm not accusing of anyone doing anything on purpose. It's just sometimes inequities happen in the midst of creating formulas and trying to create equity. We create inequities in an indirect way. And this chart shows you that New Haven is getting the short end of the stick when it comes to the alliance funding compared to the district. So we want to make sure that this is something that's brought up to the surface so we can have these conversations and figure out, okay, how can we improve this a little better. But moving on to the next slide, we have the historical alliance and priority grant allocations. And I showed you, I talked a little bit about earlier about the alliance and the priority funding now getting to that point where now there's no projected increases coming up in the upcoming years. And we also talked about the fact that 236 FTEs rely on alliance and priority grant allocation. So this is something that's important for me to make sure that we bring up, because these are conversations that we need to have as a leadership of the district, but also with the board, that if alliance and priority funding stays flat for the upcoming years, how do we keep up with the increase of cost of salaries for these 236 FTEs that rely on alliance and priority funding to pay for their salaries? How do we keep up with that? And that's a conversation that I don't want to catch you by surprise a year from now. It is a conversation I want to have now, early on, so we could start strategizing and having those conversations, not only internally, but also with our stakeholders at the state, to figure out how do we keep up with this. So this one, this year was the last year of the phase-in of increases. And here you can see kind of like how the increases kind of worked out, for the last 6-7 years. And this is the slide that I showed you earlier. I only touched base on the alliance and priority, but you can see the rest of the other major grants that cover our staffing. Like I said, it's just short of 900 FTEs that are covered by special funds or grants. And just by the nature of grants or special funds, they are never guaranteed. Some of those we have to apply on a year-to-year basis. Some of those are competitive. Some of those may or may not pan out. I know that one of the board members in a previous meeting asked about the federal funding and the impact that it could have, given the current climate at the federal level. And this is the kind of conversation that we need to have, right? The federal grants, whether it's Title I, IDEA, these grants that may or may not be affected, right, by this particular climate. But I also want to talk about it from the perspective of, when we talk about IDEA, we're talking about 74 FTEs. If we're talking about Title I, we're talking about 112 FTEs. These are critical staffing that we need in our schools. So it's not just the loss of funding. We're losing our best asset, which are our staff. We're losing what makes New Haven to be in that path of excellence. So for us, it's extremely important for us to provide this perspective. So take a, I don't know if you're like me that likes to take pictures with my eyes, like I'm very visual. There's a name for that. Don't ask me what it is. Like I told you, I just learned English the other day. So if you take a picture with your eye, take a picture of this one with your eyes, because this is the most important one almost of the whole stack. Because this talks about our reliance on grants for staffing. And this is a conversation that speaks about sustainability for us in the upcoming years. And like I said before, when the district and the board hired me, was not just to do finances, accounting 101 in the office, was for me to think about strategically about not this year, but also years to come. This is the conversation we need to have moving forward. On the next slide, we have what you've seen in the past. So I will introduce this slide in this manner. So New Haven Public Schools hereby submits its proposed budget of $252.6 million for the upcoming fiscal year. This request reflects the district's unwavering commitment to providing equitable, high-quality education to all our students while navigating rising operational cost, evolving student needs. This request reflects our true operating costs without any additional applied revenue. That's important. An adjusted budget of $232.1 million has been previously presented during the board meeting workshop on March 2nd of 2026, but that number is based on revenue assumptions that may or may not become reality. The total budget increase to $252 million is approximately 18.4%. So I want to be very clear, and we have this conversation in multiple meetings, not only in FNO, but also in the budget workshop. Our request is $252.6 million status quo budget. The community, and this is one of the benefits of the community forums that we did, all 6 of them. One of the most important things that we got out of the community forums was that people were asking for transparency, for us to be proactive, for us to think just beyond these big numbers. So the leadership, we sat down and we said, okay, 252.6 is exactly what we need to keep status quo. That will cover the increases that I showed you for the bargaining units. That includes every other cost that's recent. It also catches up from all the other deficits that we've had in the past, because I think it's important for people to understand that I don't need just the increase, the new expenses. I also need to cover the deficits that we keep having every year after year. So when I present a budget to you, it covers the deficits that we've had and also the new expenses that are upcoming. So 252 will do just that. But because people wanted to hear transparency, I said, okay, I know that oftentimes we have opportunities with some special funds to leverage some special funds to cover some of the staffing costs and some of the other expenses. So we looked at the special funds and based on the parameters of the grants and the applications and what we were mandated to use those fundings for, we're able to then leverage some of that funding to cover some of the general cost. So we're saying we're asking for 252. We know we could use just short of $20 million to leverage those expenses. That would take us down to $232 million. $232 million will be still an increase of, again, I don't have the slide here in front of me. What is it? It will be an increase of $18.9 million, I believe the number is, compared to, oh wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, 18.9, I see the number now. $18.9 million compared to the budget of this year. Out of the 18.9, you will say, well, Amilcar, the mayor proposed another $5 million. So if the others approve $5 million, then it's not 18.9 anymore. That's true. It will make it 14.9. But this is what we're doing when we only think about the $232 million. We're kicking the can down again. in a matter of speaking, we're kicking the countdown again because what we're doing is that we're still cultivating that habit of using special funds and grants for costs that should be covered by general funds. And we're tying down more staffing, more core services to grants that may or may not arrive, for grants that are here today, may not be here tomorrow, for grants that the amount approved changes all the time, up or down. We've had grants that have gone down. We have grants that have gone up. Every year it's a different story. And we cannot tie down our staffing costs, our salaries, our core services to grants that are not permanent. So $252 million will solve that part of the issue. It will keep us status quo. But then now it relieves $20 million for us to then do what grants are supposed to do: improve, add additional programming. Well, what I've been talking about throughout this whole presentation about improving quality service, adding, expanding, that's what we're looking for with these $252 million to release that $20 million that's tied down now with staffing, so we could expand and increase the services to our students. So as stakeholders, we have a responsibility now to attend to that need and to attend to this request. And I hope that that moving forward, you accept this request and that we find ways to fulfill this request on behalf of our children. I'll stop there. No pressure, but I'll stop there and then I'll let the chair now open up with questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hernandez. Thank you, Dr. Negron, for the thorough presentation. I want to open it up to the board for discussion, question, comments. Ms. Downer?
Thank you for the presentation, Chief Hernandez. I have a question. Given that the fixed operational costs like the snow and the snow removal, any landscaping or building maintenance are not scaling down proportionally with our almost 20% student enrollment decline, what is the strategy to realign our facilities or footprint and leverage our regional shared services or our local shared service if there is an opportunity to collaborate with Public Works or Park and Rec to bring the maintenance expenses in line with the lower state ECS aid?
Yeah, let me call on our Chief of School Operations to answer that question for you, Ms. Downer.
Yes, we do work with our city partners and look at ways of reducing costs. We are still in the midst of that process now of looking at what things can be services in-house as well as services that we work with our partners on. As mentioned before, with the snow removal during each storm, our Parks Department has availed themselves to help support our cleanup of getting lots open after parking bans, getting bus lanes cleared up so that we are, as best as possible, we can reduce the number of days we're closed at any time. And we're still looking at efficiencies that we have. That's still in the works right now, and some more will be presented at the next Finance and Operations.
Okay, I got part two of that question, because I know that some districts often look at other districts to see if they can look at some shared services between districts. Are we looking at that also?
If I may, right now, Ms. Downer, we do have some shared services, particularly around, let's see here. Where it comes to, where's my line here? There are some shared services, particularly like in IT at this point, that we are leveraging. To your point, it's at a small scale, but I think that's an area that we have to continue to look to see, are there more opportunities, right? Not just inside of custodial work, like IT now, but perhaps to your point, could there be more there? I know, for example, right now in the manner in which health services are supported, right? Like the city supports by placing our nurses in our schools, where we then, as a BOE, take care of the school-based health centers. So there's some of that, but definitely the opportunity to look at more possibilities.
Okay. Is there any way we can also reassess our vendor contracts for services? And I know that, Chief Hernandez did a great job on transportation, but is there some areas there where we can reduce the operational spending there and also leverage volume discounts?
Part of that will be in the transportation update about what we're looking to do. And then obviously with the end of the contract and it going out to bid again, making a better contract, RFP is the core to making services that are within our budget, that we can be predictable budgets, as well as something we can stay in to meet the service needs.
Okay, and my last question is for forecasting. I don't know, maybe Chief Hernandez can answer this. So you have a $6.7 million forecast for other contractual services, and I take it that that's where our privatization is with the custodials and everything is in that line. I know we asked for definitions of each line. Do you foresee that number actually decreasing in the fiscal year 28? Or do you see that that's going to be a standard cost for your 5-year plan?
My apologies, Ms. Downer. Where do you see that 6.7 million?
So it's in your other contractual services, and I believe that was slide 27.
Okay. Well, slide 27 is the last. So slide
maybe-
26 maybe?
Maybe twice, slide 26, I'm sorry.
Sure. Even then, I don't see the 6.7 that you're referring.
It's 16.7.
Oh, 16. Okay, so on that one?
Yes.
So can you repeat the question again? I was.
So do
sort of
you
trying to look for
foresee
it.
that forecasted for the fiscal year 2028?
Okay.
Do you see that being fixed, going straight across? Because that's where our privatization is, in that line.
Yeah, I think as Dr. White has mentioned in previous meetings and even today, there are many opportunities for us to look at each of these contracts and not only contractually review the way that we put the RFP out there for contractors or for vendors to apply or to apply for, but also the combination of opportunities like shared services, opportunities of, like Dr. White just mentioned, how the Parks and Rec has, tag team with our team to clear some of the school areas, which then takes down some of the costs for our vendor. Those are opportunities that we are going to continue to seek and create more efficiencies. Dr. Negron?
Yeah, and one of the things that I want to highlight, which has been a process that we implemented this year, is that, to your point, as we continue to look, are there efficiencies? One of the things that we did this year is the way in which we look at every single contract that comes before us, even before we bring it forward to FNO. Specifically, what we do is we ask ourselves 3 key questions. Can we build this expertise in-house? So as it relates to the facilities management, that's exactly what we're doing. Can we build that expertise in-house? And at the next FNO, either next FNO or BOE, forgive me for not having the date in front of me, we plan to bring the analysis that we've done to say, what do we pay now? What would that look like if we were to bring it in-house, right? So that's one of the questions that we ask. Not just for that contract, but again, for every contract that is coming before us. The other question that we ask is there a more sustainable strategy For example, when we're hiring a contractor to come in and do a service, particularly around something related to like instruction, we ask, well, are we better off if we actually hire a person? Because that way we build sustainability. We have the person moving forward. So that is the second question that we ask. And the third question is that we ask ourselves, can we find the efficiency? And we've done a lot of those samples this year, meaning, can we bundle services? If we know multiple schools are looking for that service, can we bundle it and then talk with the vendor and say, hey, if we bring these many, what amount reduction are you willing to give us? And we've been able to do that. So I called out my own like student impact filter, because I'm forcing the team to say, we're no longer just, okay, do we have the paperwork? Let's put it before FNO. No, we want to ask those questions because we're trying to get at better efficiencies. So I just wanted to take an opportunity right now to say that's the way we're looking at everything, not just facilities related contracts or operations related contracts or instructional, whether it's after school programming, you name it. Those are the key questions that I'm asking our team to ask. And even moving forward, how can we put those layers in place through these electronic mechanisms that we're trying to bring about to the district, so that these questions do not slow down the speed in which we're making the decisions. And they just don't end up sitting in somebody's email, that they can actually be tracked through a system to know where is that in terms of the flow of the life of the decisions that are being made related to contracts. Long-winded, but again, I just wanted to highlight not only for you, but everybody, that we have been listening and that we are continuing to look at ways to bring about operational efficiencies. But again, thank you for your question.
And thank you both. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Downer. Mr. Wilcox, Dr. Joyner?
Yes, just want to thank you all for this presentation. I can tell it's the result of a lot of work. I'm very also happy to see the budget book is back, and I think it's back a month earlier in the budget cycle than I've seen it previously in previous years. And so I think that's even more carrying on with the commitment that the superintendent and her staff made and the board made to increasing budget transparency this cycle. And so I do appreciate that. And it's been very interesting to be going through it. And I highly recommend comparing it also to previous budget books, which are available on the district website, maybe using an AI tool just to have it start to tease things out. And definitely the things that stand out are the giant increases in special education costs and the transportation costs, which some of which is mandated because it's tied to the special education costs. And so very much am appreciative of that and seeing that information. And just the special education costs that you presented tonight, 18% of our enrollment, but more than 30% of our general funds are spent on this. What is provided by our funders just is not keeping up. And this is also after working to bring down some of those expenses through trying to bring some things in-house through the new program at Wexler, as well as also having staff placements, I think, at charter schools to also try to control the special education costs that we're mandated to pay for New Haven students that go to charter schools. So even with trying to be innovative in that as best we can with available funds, it's still just exploding those costs. I do appreciate seeing, all the information in the presentation. I'm looking forward to really spending some time over the next week or so thinking about it. The staffing trends chart I thought was very interesting. Might just add some notes of explanation to the categories, because there's that one category of non-instructional staff that there's a whole lot of pieces to that you explained here verbally, but I think might be useful on the page itself. That's the one that's showing the decrease in top-level administrators, decrease in teachers, but some increases in other staff, and it was included, I think you said things like bus drivers and so on. So just making clear what categories of staff in there. Otherwise, people might just assume, as we constantly hear, that, oh, they're just sitting at Meadow Street. You know, we're not adding hundreds and hundreds of positions at Meadow Street. It's the way the staff are being counted more accurately now into the different categories is what I heard. So I just suggest that. Going through the budget book as I did notice a few calculation errors on, I noticed it on Cross and eSIMS just in terms of enrollment projection for next year was ending up as 0. So just to make sure nobody thinks we're not going to close Cross, that would be very challenging. But it's just, it looked like the column didn't total. And I noticed it on eSIMS. It might have been on another, but all the other data looked fine to me. But it was, those are the two. I saw the zeros and I'm like, oh, what's going on there? But I see it's just probably a calculation error, I'm assuming. Just to finish up here, do think that I'm hoping that this gets sent to, once it's put up on the website, also sent to our alders and to the New Haven delegation and to anybody else in the world that wants to see this, along with the YouTube video of this meeting that has the very extensive explanations of things. I also think that when it's posted on the website, if it could be posted with maybe a thought exchange link so that anybody that wants to can ask questions, provide more information, ideas, etc. Just something that's also gathering in more input and trying to answer those questions that people might have after viewing the materials. Finally, I just want to say, and I'll be a broken record on some of these things, this is not a growth budget. In a sense, this is the cost of standing still budget. And that's even taken into account, there has been progress in categories. We're going to get complaints that the numbers aren't going up high enough and fast enough. I always remind people a percentage of increase in something means real students re-engaging with school, real progress in some students' education. Obviously, there's more to go, but that progress is real in spite of the costs not having the funding. In a lot of ways, this document is really lining the failures in Connecticut in funding education, which is constitutionally protected in Connecticut, not taking care of it. And you see this in things like the unequal or the unevenness in per pupil funding, which is everything. When you're talking about funding education, the per pupil funding, which is allowed to be so much lower in the high needs places like New Haven, in spite of the city working to try to fill that gap, we're not seeing what we need from the state. We're not seeing what we need from the federal government. We're also seeing this as the failure in the ECS formula when it was innovative when it was set up, but it was not indexed to inflation. And that would have right now, instead of 11,525 as the base formula amount, would have been more than 18,000 if it was just indexed to inflation. And we all know for the cost of doing our home business and keeping our cars running and paying rent or paying a mortgage, nothing stays flat since 2013. And we're even seeing a failure, which I'm hoping can be reversed, in people backing off of finally addressing that by adding 2,000 more to the base formula amount, wanting to back off to only add 1,000 next year, which is just going to be devastating to New Haven public schools. So just in a lot of ways, we have the cities, we're seeing news all the time about our colleagues in Hartford and Bridgeport and all the challenges that they're dealing with. I think Hartford has even more special education funding happening, more needs there. We're not seeing the funding going where the need is, but we're quite happy to have places like Greenwich having more than 30% more per student that they're able to afford than places like New Haven, even when we have high concentrations of the special needs. So thank you very much for having this information. I really hope our delegation sees this. I really hope that they're able to convince their other colleagues and our governor, who seems to have forgotten about education in his budget. I'm hoping that there can be progress made, because the thing that we're not talking about is what happens if this is not funding. But I am happy to see that with the detailed budget book, it gets pretty easy for people to see what happens. Just start reducing the numbers at every single one of those schools, or start reducing the number of bus routes and adding long wait times for students, or risks to us for lawsuits if we're not meeting our mandated special education funding needs and providing those services for those students. Just start to subtract from the current, and you start to just end up where we might be. And I'm hoping that we all work together, which New Haven does better than some cities, but I'm hoping we can do even better, that we can have everybody on the same page as we talk to the governor and the other legislators to make progress and fix some of these problems that are basically saying a New Haven kid doesn't deserve, or Hartford kid doesn't deserve what a Greenwich or Westport kid does, when the numbers show they actually need a bit more. Thank you very much for this information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilcox. Dr. Joyner.
I'm going to start with what I believe to be the greatest line in hip hop. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes you wonder how you keep from going under. First of all, I thought you did a great job in the presentation. Dr. Negron, I don't think you were being long-winded. I don't think you had enough time to really go into depth to explain a stage of change related to education reform and budget development. I'll explain that. And I'm glad that you're still speaking out that way. If you look at the historical budget request, it starts with fiscal year 2016. If you know anything about American history, you know that you could have had this same template that would have started in 1619 for certain groups. And it would be a mirror to the budget differences on this page, because those groups are represented in this city. If you think about the Irish, if you think about African Americans, you think about the indigenous populations, Latinos, and so on and so forth. So from a historical standpoint, those groups have been deprived from the jump, and it's still going on. I believe in stage theory as a way to analyze how things progress or regress. And tonight, I saw the purpose of tonight's board meeting to broadcast and forecast. And you did a great job of that. You didn't do as much forecasting because it would have taken too much time. But what I think you did, and I think that Ms. Downer asked questions related to that, is that you broadcast to some extent what has happened in the past and how what happened in the past is responsible for the problems we have now. And you also talked about the internal workings of the various aspects of the budget and how within the budget, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul in a lot of cases. And we have to do that because we can't anticipate how much snow is going to fall, what's going to break down in buildings that have not been fully attended for since they were built. We built buildings, but we didn't build a budget to maintain them. And so that's the broadcast and forecast phase. The phase that Dr. Negron talked about and Ms. Downer alluded to was the efficiency analysis. We have money. Now let's see if we're using that money to maximum use. Is the cost benefit analysis favorable if we invest over here rather than over here? And that's on us to look inside the system to see whether or not all of the units are operating at full efficiency and the people in those units are performing, because you get paid to perform. And don't get mad at me if I say that you're not performing or that you're wasting resources, or that you might be better positioned in a building to deal with certain system challenges as opposed to central office. Or you might be best positioned in a building where somebody can supervise you and know that you're doing what you're supposed to do about a particular problem. I'm not calling out any particular problems, but I think once we do an efficiency analysis, we'll see that. Also to look at units, how effective units are. If we have a particular unit that's working with at-risk kids, is that unit is it at full capacity? Are the people there doing their jobs? Are all those kids there, all those kids that are there should be there, or should they be back where they were in the first place with additional services brought in there? And I'm speaking in, educators know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about any particular person, but I'm talking about general issues in education. So the phase that we're gonna have to get in once we get the money allocated is to look at our own practices to see whether or not those practices are bearing fruit, to see whether or not we have given enough equity to certain fields of our field, like libraries and so on and so forth. And then, of course, reallocation is necessary. But I think the other thing that we fail to do that we're gonna do now with this board and this administration is forecasts. And you did some of that tonight. We know that we have fixed costs in our contracts for the next 3 years. We shouldn't wait until next year or to time to rebargain to talk about this and that. Because one, we ought to be talking to our union leadership on a regular basis from now until the next contract negotiation, so that we don't have to bring drama into the boardroom, so that we realize that we're on the same team. And we realize that in order to pay teachers and other educators what they deserve, that we have to come together as one union to bargain with the powers that be. That's critically important because this board will give you everything it can give you. And we were of that mind from the beginning of the negotiations. And that's for all of the unions. We're gonna give you as much as we can give you. But we need to come together as a community to bargain for what we deserve because it's our money in the first place. It's the money we send to state and federal coffers to maintain this country and these states. And the people that we elect are the ones who are supposed to make the best decisions about allocation of that. Not only that, but New Haven provides more medical services, more cultural support, more anything. Our cities can provide that to the state. And so that ought to be taken in consideration when you use our infrastructure to come into hospitals and to go to colleges and all these other things that we offer. When we use that, then we ought to get a little something for being a place where people can come and use those services. And that's really the dysfunction of state and federal government, that they don't take that into account. And it's a larger issue that gets into history and economics and distribution of wealth and all those other things. But I think if we can handle all three of those stages, broadcasting and forecasting, rigorous examination of our practices within the system, maintaining frequent contact with our union leaders, and being very open and honest about what we have and what we want to give you. And then reallocation of resources is necessary based on the needs of the kids and the frontline workers in buildings. I think if we can do that, that we will build a better mousetrap. I guess in this era, we need a better rat trap. But I think we can do that. And if we can be governed by what's rational and what's ethical, if we can let that be our driving forces. And you're in a very strong position because not only are you a fiscal expert, but you also understand the politics because of your service on the city council in Hartford. You know the deal. And you know the reality of how the city is underfunded. And as a consequence, it takes more of the city to allocate resources already scarce toward the school system. And that's the problem that our mayor faces. Even though he is a warrior for negotiating with Yale and the state for more resources to supplant us, to handle the inequities that we face as an urban community. So thank you so much. I'm gonna just ask for three things that won't be hard to do. I think that whenever you have a document this big, you need an executive summary so that people who don't have time to go through all of it, at least they have a general sense of, and I don't know if it's in there. It is,
Yeah, the budget book has one.
the budget book has an executive summary. That's good. Great.
Actually, it
wonderful.
goes beyond the executive summary. Then we have another section that's a follow-up to the executive summary.
Right,
so
right,
pretty
right.
good.
So that's good. So that's a great point. I still believe you need a budget narrative, and that's not hard to do with AI. If that's in there, that's great.
Yeah,
I didn't have a chance to go through the whole.
I think you're gonna be very happy
Yeah.
with the first 17
Well, if
pages.
you say it's in there, I trust your judgment
Yeah.
because you've been honest. And then, of course, I don't know if there's a glossary here.
There
There we
is
go.
one. There is
So-
one. I was thinking about you every single time we're adding another term. So it's there.
Thank you, thank you. So I think that no one can be critical, and you can be critical if you're trying to help. But I think that's a great improvement. I think it's it's an unprecedented publication as it relates to that. And I think we just need as much public input as possible to make this even better. But again, don't criticize unless you're trying to help. There are some people who just come and make public comment and they just want to leave. But bring some solutions with and leave your drama, but bring some solutions when you come. And they don't always have to be out loud. You know, you can let people know, pull people's coat before the meeting and say, in the future, we'd like to see this and that and whatever. I think we have a much better year going forward if we do that. And I thank you very much for that. I thank you very much, Dr. Negron, for leading that process. And the unsung hero in this over the last several years is Matthew Wilcox, who is the best financial fiscal committee person I've ever known, and I've known a few. So thank you so much for that. We got to get to those UConn girls, so
Thank you, Dr. Joyner.
game's on tonight.
Mayor Elicker, and then Dr. Benitez.
Just a couple quick comments. Appreciate the presentation. I often give Dr. Negron a hard time about long presentations, and I think this is one of the longer ones, but it was very engaging. I appreciate the self-deprecating humor. I'm sure Maya appreciated the feedback on the New Haven Independent titles. But seriously, it was well done and really, really engaging. Just a couple quick comments. So in downsizing, Ms. Downer raised, I think, an important significant thing that we've done with the students numbers going down is closed 3 schools in the last 6 years, merged 2 others, and Dr. Negron's reference bringing special ed services more so in-house. If we had those school buildings open now, it would be much more costly for us to operate snow clearance, utilities, landscaping, not to mention additional staff for a probably much lower teacher-student ratio. So it'd be very difficult. Just the one thing I want to point out is, and I know you weren't exactly saying this, but I think it's important for us not to have the premise that we should not have grant dollars funding staff, and we should not have the goal that we bring all staff members into the general fund. It's not realistic. It's not even close to realistic, but it's also something that is standard across almost all districts, with the exception of some very wealthy districts. I mean, I don't know how you have $92 million and you don't spend that on staff. I think just the theme here is we need more money from the state. And I know that's what you're trying to say. I just didn't want the people that are listening to think that somehow we were inappropriately using grant funds, or that we should have the goal that we bring it all into the general fund.
Thank you very much, Mayor Elicker. Dr. Benitez.
Yes. Want to thank the chief and also our facilities person, now our director, for explaining some of the creative ways in which you are trying to improve how our expenditure is more creative. But I also want to say that I am impressed by the ability that all of you, including our superintendent, have to tie every conversation about dollars to quality of education for children, because that's what we're doing here. And I am impressed because in the past we say that as a byproduct, but this presentation was not about a byproduct. It was about what our work is and how the money follows the children and follows the children in order to impact their learning, in order to impact their experience in our schools, in our city. So I am very impressed with that, how you were able to tie that. And I want you to continue to do that. The other thing that, again, I agree with some of you have said that the historical account, so that we see how things have changed and how we are trying to understand why things have changed. And hope that as we are understanding this better and listening to articulation that makes sense, that the public can do that in order to advocate like they are doing in Hartford or at the state level. I want to warn us, like the mayor says, we cannot live without grants. But I like the dream. I like the fact that we're dreaming that we could find that money that grants give us and not need it. But we also know that grants, as the chief mentioned, Chief Hernandez, could go away. So we all need to continue to stay focused, listen to what's happening in Washington, listen to what's happening in Hartford, keep our eyes and ears open, because New Haven kids and New Haven taxpayers, one of which is me, and I pay quite a steep tax for my home. And I don't mind it because I believe children in New Haven deserve that, and people in New Haven deserve for me as a taxpayer to pay for my um, very loved home that I have here. But I do want people to continue to be part of a team. I heard superintendent in a podcast say that she feels that this board of ed is not a team of 8, but a one mind team. And I agree. I think this Board of Education has landed in a place where we can support each other, we can support our superintendent, and we can support our staff in doing a great job in figuring out how we can spend the money to improve education for children. So thank you very much, and looking forward to continue to read more and understand more.
Thank you very much, Dr. Benitez. Just want to mention 3 thoughts that I'll run through. One is I appreciate the ongoing responsiveness of this team to the conversations that you've held, to the input that has been given. I noticed the board narrative, I noticed the glossary, and having the budget book now, even though that work will need to be potentially adjusted once we know the final number. And the point that stands out to me is that responded to inquiry and following through on task is not something that's just technical. It's also social and emotional. And at least for me, to pull myself together to follow through on something that I know is going to take more of me to do is a lot. And so I just appreciate and don't want to understate the work that has gone into all these conversations. And then for us to give it over to somebody else and have them make a decision is a lot. So thank you very much for your responsiveness. The second thing I'll mention, slide 23, where it talks about the Alliance revenue per pupil for 2026. It has me both disheartened and also just very curious about what is going on here, that New Haven is receiving more than half less than the average per pupil amount. And we're receiving it. It's not about we earned it. New Haven is not less valuable. New Haven is not more than 50% less valuable than any other district, yet our students have this number. So I'm curious what needs to change in this formula to really bring the equity where it needs to be. My last comment, so in addition to Mr. Wilcox mentioned about our state delegates and our state leaders having the information in this book and the presentation, I also think this needs to be sent, or I also think our vendors need to take notice. And I have a desire and an expectation that they will be innovative in their own efficiencies, that they will look at how they can implement things to reduce their own expenses and pass on some of those savings to the vendors, particularly if New Haven has been with them for a very long time and has supported them in a very strong way. I know that as an F&O member, I'm looking at everything that comes forward, and it's not just okay to say, well, since I'm the lowest bidder on whatever I'm presenting, I should get it. What I do know in a different field, not necessarily in the education field, but in a different field, there's a name brand cost, and then there's the same product that just happens to not be name brand. And there can be a company that makes a product, they'll make a supermarket version, then they'll make the name brand version, and they can be essentially the same, they can perform essentially the same, but one will cost more because of the name brand recognition. There are other things that are involved, but my point is the increase in costs should definitely match an increase in quality and performance. And some things don't cost as much as they're growing. So I would really hope that our vendors will still be on top of their craft, that they will work on their own efficiencies, that they will be innovative on their own, and that someone will step forward and say, hey, what can we do to bring the cost down for education and other nonprofits? Now, I'm not talking about self-driving buses. Don't want to put any children on that right now. But yeah, but there are things that can happen. There are things that we can do. So for me, just thank you very much for all the work that has gone into this, all the work that will go forward. And I look forward to the state coming through and making this impact and creating a legacy that will be spoken about for generations to come. Dr. Negron, does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Okay, next is the president's report. And I'm gonna miss mine. I wanna talk about a finance fair that I went to that our students were a part of, but I'll save that for another meeting. Teaching and learning report, facilities naming committee report, Dr. Joyner.
I'm gonna save that for the next meeting. Just say we had a great TL meeting about language development. And I'm hoping that Dr. Negron will put that on the agenda. It was phenomenal. We are at the top of the heap when it comes to what people are doing nationally with language, and any in-depth stuff I'll say for the next meeting.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none. The Head Start report, Citywide School Building Committee report, Finance and Operations Committee report.
Yes, thank you. I'll be brief. The minutes for Head Start are posted, but I'll highlight 2 or 3 things. One is, as you know, the Head Start grant was submitted after it was approved by the board, so that's been done. We've discussed in the past, there was a monitoring review and they had received the results. And for the significant health and safety incidents, the deficiencies have been corrected. And there are current no outstanding issues or open findings. So that's good news that those have come to an end. Then finally, I'll also say we remain very strong on enrollment with almost every slot full, 434 out of 438. So just 4 slots available in the district. So that's good news. The team there continues to keep that going. And my understanding is they're already working on the class for next year. So the other thing I'll mention is finance and operate. There was no citywide report because we haven't met since our last board meeting. The minutes for the F&O meeting are posted. You might want to take a look at those. In addition to some things we've talked about, there's also a restroom report and information on our updated discussion calendar, which we have some that outlines when we're going to be discussing things in F&O. And at our next meeting, we'll be looking at continuing that calendar out through the summer months as well. So if there's any things you all would like to be hearing about, please let the committee know and Dr. Negron, and we'll work on fitting that into the discussion calendar so we can get updates on the important things we need to get updates on. Happy to answer any questions, but that's the end of the reports.
Thank you. Any discussion? Thank you. Governance report, Dr. Benitez.
There's no report for today. We haven't met yet this month.
Thank you, Dr. Benitez. For the Food Service Task Group Committee, we did meet. I look forward to having the minutes available to you. And I also look forward to, bringing a presentation by the food service team and also our food service partners in the city and in the state, because they do a remarkable job. And I appreciate the work that they do on serving the students, also providing special lunches, food allergy, and helping with food during the break periods and also during the year when more food would be needed in family households. Any discussion? Thank you. Seeing none. Accept the motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you. Dr. Joyner,
Yes.
Dr. Benitez,
yes.
Mr. Wilcox,
Yes.
Ms. Downer,
Yes.
Mr. Waters,
Yes.
Mr. Cologne, Mr. Ailey,
Yes.
Mayor Elicker.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. We are adjourned.